Also, for a different angle that's surfacing, and now a former presidential candidate is suggesting that people actually get paid if they get the vaccine. So this is blowing up on our Facebook page. We've got a lot of comments that we'll get to in just a minute, sharing what your opinion is about this. A Gallup poll is finding that a whopping 42% of people wouldn't feel comfortable getting the vaccine. There are three major concerns right now around it. People are worried that the vaccine was just created too fast. Drug makers didn't have time to get all the kinks out. They're also concerned if it's even safe and effective. And there's a handful of people who say, just forget it. We don't trust vaccines in general. So what is this proposal all about? Well, it is pretty straightforward. They're saying you want $1,500? Well, get the vaccine. You don't get paid. It's kind of like a stimulus check and a vaccine incentive rolled into one. So the reaction on our Facebook page is pretty mixed on this idea. David says whatever it takes to get people to get the vaccine, and he thinks it would be good for the economy as well. Vanessa says she doesn't want to be a guinea pig for this vaccine, I guess no matter what the incentive would be. So let us know what your opinion is on the vaccine in general and this idea of forking out about $1,500 if you were to get the vaccine. Use our hashtag WakeUpCLT this morning to let us know what you think. Carolyn.
Yep, it's interesting. I'm sure you're going to get a lot of response, so we'll discuss that later.
The social network being sued by the U.S. government and 48 states, including Massachusetts. Lawmakers accuse Facebook of abusing its power.
They believe the internet company has become a monopoly and it's keeping smaller competitors out of the market.
Federal regulators want Facebook, the tech giant, to be a little less giant. The Fed's lawsuit asked the courts to force Facebook to sell off some of its biggest assets, including Instagram and WhatsApp.
These applications, the lawsuit alleges, give Facebook an unfair competitive advantage in the social marketplace.
New York's Attorney General announced a separate lawsuit on behalf of 48 states, including Massachusetts, accusing Facebook of unfairly eliminating its competition. Attorney General Maura Healey wrote, quote, "We are suing to stand up for the millions of consumers and small businesses that have been harmed by Facebook's illegal business practices." Facebook becomes the second big tech company to face an antitrust lawsuit this year. The Justice Department sued Google in October, alleging its dominance in online searches stifles competition and harms consumers. In a statement, Facebook pointed out that the feds approved the 2012 purchase of Instagram and the 2014 purchase of WhatsApp, and writes the government now wants a do-over with no regard of the impact that precedent would have on broader business communities. In leaked audio of a meeting published by The Verge in October, Facebook CEO Mark Zuckerberg told employees that he would push back against the plan to break up big tech companies.
At the end of the day, if someone's going to try to threaten something that existential, you go to the mat and you fight.
And tonight, Facebook is fighting by calling the lawsuits revisionist history and says Instagram and WhatsApp became the products they are today because of Facebook's investment.
ماشي افراد بالشارع سد البوشرية العالم علقانة جبات عم تسحب جبات شوفوا ملا خبرية ماشي افراد بالشارع سد البوشرية العالم علقانة جبات عم تسحب جبات شوفوا ملا خبرية
no podemos aquí.
Allá no hay peligro, carnal, ya se sentó aquel.
Allá no hay peligro, viejo. Allá se está viniendo, Venga, hombre, venite, hombre. Ahí gritó más. Saquen la bestia, Chelo, saquemos la bestia.
هذه بكار ابو فهد اليوم ضربتها صاعقه. معوض خير. السلام عليكم.
سلام يا هلا.
معوض خير يا ابو فهد. فاديه رؤوسكم ان شاء الله.
الحمد لله على كل حال، هذا امر الله، راضين بقسمه الله والحمد لله. لا سلمة نفوس الحلال اموره
الحمد
كلها عند الله سبحانه وتعالى.
الله يعوضكم خير ان شاء الله.
Down.
Allá no hay peligro, carnal, ya se sentó aquel.
Allá no hay peligro, viejo. Venga, hombre, venite, hombre. Ahí gritó más. Saca la bestia, Chelo, saquemos la bestia.
هذه بكار ابو فهد اليوم ضربتها صاعقه. معوض خير. السلام عليكم. معوض خير يا ابو فهد. فاديه رؤوسكم ان شاء الله.
ficou enroscado aqui no canteiro aqui. Graças a Deus estamos em segurança.
Situação desse clube.
The bonfire being pushed to the south-southeast by strong Santa Ana winds. The fire has spotted across Santiago Canyon Road and is well established, and I expect it to make a run all the way to the flatlands right now. Again, extreme fire behavior, as you can see. If you live in the area, you need to be aware of mandatory evacuations. Again, if you don't feel safe, do not wait for mandatory evacuation in order to leave. More updates to come. Right now, fire cause unknown, 0% contained, probably 1 to 200 acres.
انتبهوا يلا هذا جبهة الطيار فوق أرض انتبهوا يا الخبدي انتبهوا يا الحلال
Meanwhile, Vice President Mike Pence spent the afternoon in Cape Canaveral and at the Kennedy Space Center. During his visit, he announced 2 military bases will become the first to carry the name Space Force. Patrick Air Force Base is now Patrick Space Force Base, and Cape Canaveral Air Force Station is now Cape Canaveral Space Force Station. Brevard County is one of 6 finalists for the U.S. Space Command headquarters. 1 year ago, President Donald Trump created the Space Force as a 5th branch of the military with the signing of the National Defense Authorization Act.
A trip to hospital and into the spotlight today for Donna McKinnon and her daughter Erin, the first care workers from Cornwall to receive the Pfizer vaccine, breathing sighs of relief that soon they and their vulnerable residents will be protected.
Really emotional. We were one of the first care homes in Cornwall to be hit. And we had 6 residents, 9 of our staff were quite poorly. Myself and my manager were really poorly, and I actually had a spell in here at the time. It's taken us a long time to get back on our feet.
Yeah, it feels good that hopefully we can go back to being normal sometime soon.
The vaccine will help at-risk health and care workers too, including those who had to shield during courses of cancer medication like Gail.
It was just so frustrating because I was well, I felt well. So this is my lifeline, so I'm hoping everybody else feels the same.
Thousands have already been vaccinated, and while clinical trials picked up common side effects like mild aches and fever, the head of the regulator confirmed 2 NHS workers had allergic reactions yesterday.
We know from the very extensive clinical trials that this wasn't a feature, but if we need to strengthen our advice, now that we've had this experience in the vulnerable populations, the groups who've been selected as a priority, we get that advice to the field immediately.
And they did. People with a history of significant allergic reactions, like the 2 affected, should not take the jab for now. We're being told there's no cause for alarm, but it's clear confidence in the vaccine will be crucial in the months to come. And we're being warned too not to jump the gun and stop social distancing.
It's like someone giving up a marathon race at mile 16. It would be absolutely the wrong thing to do. But there will come a point where the choice about exactly when to start to ramp things down, how fast and which, needs to be made. And that is fundamentally a science-informed political decision.
The woman who entered the history books as patient A yesterday left hospital this afternoon, knowing she must still be careful at Christmas and beyond, but hopeful that 2021 will eventually be better.
Tessa's in the studio for us now. And Tessa, there are concerns that this new allergy warning could harm confidence in the vaccine. What do you think?
Yes, we know a large number of people are wary about the vaccine and many cite safety concerns. So authorities will have to show that they are on the ball, not just when it comes to monitoring problems, but by being open and transparent when they do occur, so people understand the vaccine and there are no surprises. The second big challenge at the moment, though, is complacency.
I'm Ann McAfee at the Live News Desk with the latest on the minute-by-minute plans for distribution of a coronavirus vaccine. Canada just gave approval to the Pfizer vaccine, becoming the 3rd country to do so, behind the UK and Bahrain. 249,000 doses of the 2-dose vaccine will be there by year's end, earmarked for long-term care home residents and the staff. And tomorrow, the U.S. Food and Drug Administration could do the same. Newly released documents suggest the agency will approve Pfizer's vaccine, and doses could be shipped out by this weekend. Now, the Pentagon's going to be receiving 44,000 doses. The first allotment will be delivered to 16 locations in the U.S. and abroad. 2 are here in California, including the Coast Guard station in Alameda. Chopper 5 was above the base this morning. The feds say once the vaccine gets FDA approval, they're going to be giving out shots to military members within the next 2 days.
We're recommending that everyone take the vaccine when it becomes available to protect yourselves, your families, your shipmates, your wingmen, your battle buddies, and your communities.
We will be closely covering tomorrow's FDA hearing. It will essentially be a science court that will be debated in public and live streamed. Just how strong the data
Lisa
backing the
Hernandez.
shots
Let's get straight on over to Brittany Jeffers with how local health professionals are responding to this news. Brittany. Now, locally, doctors are saying that we need to continue to look at the data. But according to health officials in the UK, they say those 2 people who suffered an allergic reaction are recovering. However, as you mentioned, they do have a warning for those who may have a history of severe or significant allergic reactions. A warning issued just one day after Britain's mass vaccination rollout against COVID-19. U.S. regulators say they've had 2 reports of possible allergic reactions from people who received the shot. The 2 people affected were staff members with the National Health Service who had a history of allergies. While authorities haven't specified what the reactions were, the UK's Medical and Healthcare Products Regulatory Agency is looking into whether those reactions were linked to the vaccine. UK regulators now saying the warning is for anyone who has a significant allergic reaction to vaccines, medicine, or food, or carries an EpiPen. This news comes as the vaccine is one step closer to approval in the U.S. The FDA is scheduled to meet tomorrow to discuss the Pfizer vaccine.
There are people that have had true allergic reactions to vaccines in the past. Those are extraordinarily rare. So if there are medical contraindications to a vaccine, obviously you shouldn't get it. But they're relatively rare.
Locally, Dr. James McDivitt with Baylor College of Medicine says some people should heed the warning, but Americans overall shouldn't be overly concerned.
Based on the clinical trial data we've seen so far, tens of thousands of people vaccinated, very minimal side effects. Again, body aches, muscle soreness at the site of injection, perhaps some low-grade fever, the kind of things you would expect with a vaccination.
Now, as we know, communities across the area are keeping a very close eye on the COVID-19 cases. And today at 1 o'clock here in Fort Bend County, we expect to hear from the county judge as well as a representative with the Health and Human Services Department. They are going to be going over the current risk level in the community. Reporting live in Richmond, I'm Brittany Jeffers, KPRC, Channel 2 News.
The mounting fines won't stop his ministry. KPIX5's Joe Vasquez shows us that just hours after the church was found in contempt of court for refusing to stop indoor services, it held another one.
Calvary Chapel San Jose held a prayer service here tonight, as they've been doing every night during the pandemic. Church leadership says it will continue to welcome worshipers indoors despite a stay-at-home public health order and despite a defeat in court today. You wouldn't know from the applause that a Santa Clara County judge had just found Calvary in contempt of court. The legal team was all smiles, no masks, on the courthouse steps as they vowed to continue to fight.
God's worried about your heart and your life and your eternity more than a mask, because those are debatable things, right?
Santa Clara County is not debating. It is suing the church for continuing to hold indoor services, violating a restraining order banning large-scale indoor worship services at their San Jose church. Calvary will now have to pay fines of $2,500 for each infraction. The church says the total is around $700,000 in fines.
I respect the judge. He has got a hard, difficult position to be in because, you know, he's looking at the newspaper and hearing about cases rising and etc. And granted, it's real. But it's not what we need to stop the propaganda of fear.
I do believe they shouldn't go to the service and have it indoors. Religion has like a place. Also, our safety has a place too.
And what about their freedom of religion?
No one's taking away the freedom. It's just we're living through a time that is not normal. This doesn't happen all the time. So let's just follow the signs, follow the rules, and we'll get out of this.
The church says it will appeal today's decision to a federal court. In San Jose, Joe Vasquez, KPIX5.
Being raised tonight about that Pfizer vaccine. 2 healthcare workers in the UK suffered severe allergic reactions. WBZ's Dr. Malcolm Marshall joins us now to look at this complication. And doctor, the UK is already taking action.
That's right. So UK health officials are warning the public that people who have had a history of severe reactions, allergies in the past, should not get the Pfizer vaccine for now. Now, we're not talking about people with seasonal allergies or hay fever. We're talking about people who've had severe reactions to foods, drugs, medications, and other vaccines. Basically, people who might need to walk around with an EpiPen, for example. Now, of note, the Pfizer trial actually did not include people with a history of severe allergies. We don't know exactly what type of reaction these 2 healthcare workers had, but we hear that they're doing just fine. And we know that vaccines, in very rare cases, viruses can cause allergic reactions, though it's not clear in the Pfizer vaccine what might have triggered these reactions. We're being told that the vaccine does not contain animal protein, like egg, for example, or preservatives that can trigger reactions in other vaccines, but could there be some other component of the Pfizer vaccine which is responsible? So far, we're hearing that the vast majority of people who've received the vaccine so far, and that's thousands of people right now, have tolerated the vaccine well. Obviously, UK regulators are going to take a closer look. Pfizer researchers are going to take a closer look. And undoubtedly, the FDA advisory panel that will be meeting tomorrow will discuss it as well.
Yeah, people will be listening. They want to know that this vaccine is safe. Dr. Malika Marshall, thank you for some great insight.
2020 has had it all, but there's also the possibility of $1 trillion disaster, and you probably haven't heard anything about it. It likely won't happen this month, but as 𝐔𝐍𝐏𝐑𝐄𝐂𝐄𝐂 in this week's It's Not Too Late, now's the time to get ready.
It's not too late. This week, it is absolutely not too late. We can all get ready for what could be California's most epic disaster of all time. No, I'm not talking about more wildfires.
Holy
And not the next big earthquake. I am talking about a disaster that you probably haven't heard about before. It's something that experts call the arc storm. Now imagine this. Almost a month of drenching storms along the West Coast. They would swallow California in 10 to 20 feet of rain. I mean, we're talking 200 inches in some places. Imagine parts of Sacramento, the San Francisco Bay Area, Los Angeles, San Diego, all going underwater. There would be thousands of landslides, major dam failures, and the state's entire farm industry decimated. Now wait a minute. Why have few of us ever heard this dire prediction? Well, it's mostly because people don't remember the last time it happened. Yeah, you heard me. It has happened in what was California's deadliest and most destructive natural disaster in recorded history. It was called the megastorm. It happened in the winter of 1861 and 62.
California, 1862. It has rained for almost 45 days.
This was a multi-week extreme precipitation and flood event that essentially filled up a significant portion of the Central Valley with floodwater, creating an inland sea supposedly 30, 40 miles wide and 150 miles long.
And it wasn't just in California. It was one of the most destructive and deadly in Nevada, Arizona, and Oregon. And guess what? It's going to happen again. And it could be 3 times as devastating as the earthquake and the fires. Published 9 years ago, Dr. Lucy Jones and her team were warning that a storm like that of 1861 and 62, if it happened today, could cost the state more than $700 billion.
Our model that we did, what we called the arc storm, it was actually raining for about 25 days. And that was enough to flood 1/4 of the property in California.
This is very much a $1 trillion type disaster that we're talking about. It would also result in loss of housing for hundreds of thousands, if not a couple of million people in California potentially. It could completely wipe out the agricultural industry for a couple of years, as well as the Silicon Valley corridor in the Bay Area and the movie industry in Southern California, along with tourism.
1.5 million people would have to be evacuated from their homes.
We're talking about moving people out of harm's way for however much time it takes until the flood scenario can subside.
1/4 of the buildings in the state of California could flood. And here's the real issue. Only 12% of the properties in California are insured for flooding. A storm like this is inevitable. 1861 and 62 wasn't a freak event. The tree rings and the rocks show us that there were 6 megastorms that were more severe than the megastorm in the last 1800 years. Here's the good news, though. We will be able to see it coming. We're really good at predicting this type of thing at least a month or so in advance. But here's the bad news. When we see it coming, if it were to be, say, next month, we're not ready. For example, the California levee system is set up for 75 to 200-year floods, not a megastorm. And there's one other silver lining, that if you plan for the arc storm, it also complements planning for earthquakes.
We are not prepared, I would assume, then, for another 1861-62.
It's very difficult to prepare in many ways, and you can argue that we've made it worse because we put in our flood control and then we built underneath the flood control. So we have a lot of homes sitting in floodplains protected by levees.
So individuals need to know what their risks are, know where you live, and have a plan for your family to manage an emergency.
And that arc storm simulation that I told you about, well, it was put together almost a decade ago, so it needs an update. UCLA professor Daniel Swain is working on one, a brand new model for the arc storm. 10 years ago, the model did not take climate change into account.
I think what we're trying to do now is update that original arc storm scenario for the 21st century using the improved science, the improved modeling tools, but also incorporating the fact that we're much more confident sort of about the details of our warming climate and how that is clearly increasing the risk of extreme precipitation events.
That means that the storm Swain and his team will model this time around might actually be worse than the flood of 1862. But here's the upside of the new simulation.
I'm most optimistic about the fact that this is something that we may have caught, while it was still early enough. There's not really a lot we can do about preventing the event itself, but there's a lot that can be done to make the event less bad.
The wet winter of 2016-17 was a wake-up call for the state. The Oroville Dam, if you'll remember, nearly failed.
I'm not sure how many folks realize that there was a very real possibility of a 30-foot wall of water coming down the Feather River Canyon into the Central Valley.
That near failure was a fire drill of sorts. So, if you're sitting in Nashville or Billings or Boston and you're still watching this wondering, why does this matter to me? Well, how about a $1 trillion disaster in California? That sends the entire US government way deeper into debt. It could also empty your kitchen table. California grows a large portion of our country's crops. 99% of walnuts, 99% of artichokes, 97% of kiwis. California, though, is committed to doing its part.
This planning is taking place, but part of the responsibility is on them to be informed, to stay informed, and to do their part.
We've got to open up our minds a bit, looking at all the consequences and looking over a larger time. What government needs to be doing for us is being the guarantor of the future.
A future that will include another megastorm at some point. But if we plan right, we can all be ready.
A federal judge will hear a lawsuit accusing the state of illegally purging nearly 200,000 voters from the rolls. The Black Voters Matter Fund, along with two other groups, filed a lawsuit earlier this month. It says the state removed voters from the rolls in 2019 because those voters had moved. The only problem is this lawsuit claims those people never moved, and the Secretary of State's office didn't use a licensed postal office to verify that. This group is demanding that voters be put back on the rolls immediately. The Secretary of State's office says officials follow federal and state laws when maintaining the voter rolls. A judge plans to hear this case.
Well, also new tonight at 6, the Silver State is now expanding the capabilities of the COVID Trace app by launching an exposure notification system with it as well. So it is called the Exposure Notification Express, or ENX, and it's being launched through a partnership with Apple and Google. And according to the Department of Health and Human Services, Nevada is actually the first jurisdiction to launch both ENX and also have an app using that technology. It'll be available starting
tomorrow. The Carmel Valley community is breathing a sigh of relief after some Good Samaritans stopped a brush fire from spreading. As ABC 10 News reporter Rena Nakano explains, the men didn't do it to receive praise. They did it because it was the right thing to do.
After spending all day Tuesday on top of a roof, Ubaldo Lopez and his team at Palomar Solar and Roofing were on their way back to the office.
We were going down the hill and we started to smell.
A smell they say they couldn't ignore.
At first I thought somebody crashed, but then I saw the fire.
An ABC 10 News viewer who took these photos along Carmel Valley Road said she immediately called 911. But before the firefighters arrived, Lopez and his team pulled over and jumped into action.
So I got the extinguisher and a couple of my buddies here. They got the shovels and start throwing dirt on it.
Though they're not trained firefighters, the team is familiar with fire. They work on what's called torch-down roofing, a process where a flame is used to melt a rubbery membrane on a flat roof to make it waterproof. So they know the dangers of what could happen if the winds picked up.
Yeah, weather was crazy, and fire department been so busy lately, and that could have gotten out of hand.
With the help of a few other Good Samaritans, the team stopped the fire from spreading. Minutes later, they drove off without knowing they'd be praised for their swift actions. OMG, that would have been really tragic had it spread, one person wrote on Facebook. Wow, great effort and saved the day, said another.
What do you want to say to those people saying you guys are heroes?
No. We just, we got lucky. We were passing by, and, we got to help each other.
Becoming humble, everyday heroes who saved a neighborhood from potential disaster. Rina Nakano, ABC 10 News.
Wow, I love that. We were told that the fire was completely out before several agencies arrived.
They're just good people.
Cases in South Korea have hit a 9-month high. As a result, officials are sounding the alarms, imposing new restrictions, including the closure of gyms and karaoke bars. They had about 4,000 cases last week. 4,000. Compare that to the 1.3 million during the same time here in the U.S. But how? Well, 2 words have helped them keep cases so low: contact tracing. But it's not like what we have here at home, as 𝐔𝐍𝐿 Cho reports in from Seoul.
Gun is a contact tracer in Gangnam, Seoul, South Korea. But since the pandemic, he's taken on a role that looks more like Detective Columbo's.
You left enough clues to sink a ship.
He's been ferociously collecting and looking at data, warning those who may have been exposed to the virus. Park's team of doctors and civil servants have been working non-stop. The number of COVID-19 patients has been on the rise. Every confirmed patient in South Korea has a legal responsibility to tell people like Gun where they've been, whom they met, and when, up to 48 hours before their first symptoms. If not, the penalty could be severe.
People can be fined up to $18,000 US or be sent to prison for up to 2 years under the Infectious Diseases Control and Preventions Act.
Speed is crucial. This officer cross-checks surveillance camera footage. His job not only to verify, but to also pinpoint the people who were in close physical contact with the infected patient. From here, it looks like real detective work. A team of 2 officers are dispatched to the site to check in-building CCTV footage, collect credit card records, and interview witnesses. The challenge, finding a way to contact these potential COVID-19 patients and urge them to get free testing. All in an effort to curb the spread, South Korea has taken a rather Orwellian approach in tracking people's movements.
Here, everywhere you go, indoors, buildings, shops, restaurants, everyone has to go through this process. This is a temperature-taking robot. It takes less than a second to get your temperature checked. And then you have these QR codes on your mobile phones. And this is a way for the authorities to track down where you have been at what time exactly.
Unlike in Western countries, people are more open to being tracked and traced in South Korea.
With the QR code, I feel safer. It's for the overall betterment of society and just like for safety purposes. And I kind of want this corona to be over and done with. So I would rather do that than just deal with this forever.
We have to cooperate because we are a member of this society, and this is what we have to do.
We're here to discuss a monumental national achievement. From the instant the coronavirus invaded our shores, we raced into action to develop a safe and effective vaccine at breakneck speed. It would normally take 5 years, 6 years, 7 years, or even more. In order to achieve this goal, we harnessed the full power of government, the genius of American scientists, and the mighty American industry to save millions and millions of lives all over the world. We're just days away from authorization from the FDA, and we're pushing them hard, at which point we will immediately begin mass distribution. Before Operation Warp Speed, the typical time frame for development and approval, as you know, could be infinity. And we were very, very happy that we were able to get things done at a level that nobody has ever seen before. The gold standard vaccine has been done in less than 9 months. On behalf of the entire nation, I want to thank everyone here today who has been involved in this extraordinary American initiative. I also want to recognize members of my administration who have worked tirelessly in this effort. As a result of this unprecedented investment, we are exceedingly proud that both Pfizer and Moderna have announced that their vaccines are approximately 95% effective, which is a number that nobody expected to be able to get to, far exceeding anything that really that anybody thought. We went out and we said, what do you think a maximum would be? And I think doctors, we all came up to the conclusion that something like that would be really incredible. We have other candidates looking right now. We have some big ones that we're going to be announcing very soon. We have some companies, great companies out there you all know about, Johnson & Johnson and others, and they're all coming in, and they're coming in very quickly. We expect to have some news on that very shortly. And we have worked very well with the companies, but if for any reason we have any problems, we will be instituting the Defense Production Act, and we will make sure that we don't have any problems for very long. We've instituted it before. 2 additional companies, AstraZeneca and Johnson & Johnson. As you know, the Johnson & Johnson's a one-dose, one-shot vaccine, so we're going to see how that works. That would be very helpful if that all came out, and I think it probably will. Also, they're showing tremendous promise, all of them, tremendous promise. We're very hopeful that the FDA will authorize the Pfizer vaccine within days. We've got to get it moving. And Moderna vaccine almost immediately thereafter. Large numbers of tests and samples have been done, so hopefully that'll go very quickly. If authorized, tens of millions of vaccine doses will be available this month, and we'll get it distributed very quickly. We have that all set, and hundreds of millions more will quickly follow. Every American who wants the vaccine will be able to get the vaccine, and we think by spring we're going to be in a position that nobody would have believed possible just a few months ago. Yeah. Amazing, really amazing. They say it's somewhat of a miracle, and I think that's true. The plan we put forward prioritizes the elderly and patients with underlying conditions, as well as healthcare workers and first responders. The ultimate decision rests with the governors of the various states, and I hope the governors make wise decisions who will decide where the vaccines will go in their state and who will get them first. We urge the governors to put America's seniors first, and also I think those who work with seniors, which obviously you're going to have to do that. I think they have to go together. And doctors, nurses, first responders, etc. This will quickly and dramatically reduce deaths and hospitalizations, and within a short period of time, I think we want to get back to normal. It's a very standard phrase. We want to just get back to normal, get back to where we were a little more than 9 months ago. We're doing incredibly. And in many respects, we're still doing incredibly with our stock markets and everything else, which are hitting all new highs. We've already finalized a partnership with Walgreens and CVS, whose executives join us today. Thank you very much for being here. Thank you very much. We appreciate it very much. And they will deliver vaccines directly to nursing homes as soon as the states request that they do so. Later today, General Gus Perna will outline the detailed plan to rapidly distribute the vaccine to every state, territory, and tribe. States have designated over 50,000 sites that will receive the vaccine. We've worked very closely with the states. Actually, we've had very good relationships with the governors. I almost think all of the governors, at least in those conference calls that are somewhat secret, other than sometimes on occasion, Mike, the press will break in, which is fine too. It's amazing how you leave those rooms and about 10 seconds later, there wasn't even time for a leak. They were on the call, but that's all right. So you assume that. You always assume that. But they'll be going through pharmacies, hospitals, healthcare providers. Through our partnership with FedEx, UPS, and McKesson, we'll ship doses from warehouses directly to the designated sites, and we're thrilled to be joined by representatives of those really great American companies. Those companies have worked with us, and they've been incredible to work with, and I want to thank you all for being here. Please, thank you very much. It has been incredible, and it will end the pandemic. It will end the pandemic, and we're working with other nations, as you see actually by looking at your screen today. We're working very closely with other nations also to get the vaccines out to other nations, and that's very important. We work with the world. We're working with the world. We have great companies, and we're working with the world. In just a few minutes, I'll sign an executive order to ensure that the United States government prioritizes the getting out of the vaccine to American citizens before sending it to other nations. Now, if necessary, I told you we'll invoke the Defense Production Act, but we don't think it will be necessary. If it is, it's a very powerful act, as you know, because we've used it very, very successfully. While we begin to swiftly deploy the vaccine, we'll continue to expand the availability of groundbreaking therapies. Since April, advances in treatments have already helped reduce the mortality rate by 85%. Think of that, 85%. It's an incredible number. I've delivered on my solemn promise to make the antibody treatments, they're brilliant, they're highly successful, available to every American, and we're doing that free of cost, totally free of cost. So we're making them available, and they're available now. And if somebody gets sick, it works where they go and they get treatment if that's what the doctors are prescribing. And it's been incredible, the success. And when you hear 85%, that's some number. To me, that's a number that goes along with anything else, including the vaccines, when you think about it. As well as we've done with the vaccines, when you hear 85%, people find that one hard to believe. But you look at the stats and you see what's happening, and you look at other countries. They're having tremendous difficulties in Europe, tremendous, relatively beyond what we're having. They're having them all over the world. But this will vanquish the problem, this horrible scourge, as I call it, the China virus, because that's where it came from. And the virus has really been looked at and studied all over the world, and our scientists, our industrial and economic mobilization has been like nobody else in the world could have done. And it's very important that we share that with others and other nations. I've worked and invoked the Defense Production Act over 100 times to manufacture essential supplies in the United States, despite the grim projections from the media 8 months ago where they said this was impossible. They actually said, and you saw that a little bit, but I could give you 2 hours worth of it, but they said it will never happen, you could never do it, it was a pipe dream. But we did something that nobody thought was possible, and we also did it where no American who has needed a ventilator has been denied a ventilator. When this first came out, we weren't equipped for that. Nobody was equipped for that. And we're now making ventilators, and we have all we need in this country, but we're sending them to countries all over the world. And we're making thousands and thousands of ventilators a month. The United States has also created the largest, most advanced, and most innovative testing program in the world by far. We've conducted over 200 million tests. Think of that, 200 million tests, more than all of the European Union combined. It's not even close. Just 10 months ago, none of these innovations even existed. The tremendous progress that we've made is a testament to what our nation is capable of. When America is faced with a challenge, we come through, and we always come through to overcome every hardship and surmount every obstacle. And I think you'll be seeing that over the next few months. The numbers should skyrocket downward. We are the most exceptional nation in the history of the world. Today we're on the verge of another American medical miracle. And that's what people are saying. People that aren't necessarily big fans of Donald Trump are saying, whether you like him or not, this is one of the greatest of modern day medicine or any other medicine, any other age of medicine. American companies were the first to produce a verifiably safe and effective vaccine. Together we will defeat the virus, and we will soon end the pandemic, and we will save millions and millions of lives, both in our country and all over the world, and we've already started. Thank you again to every person here today, and for the incredible achievements that you've done. You're going to be very proud of this day, and you're going to be very proud of this period of time, because nobody thought this was possible. Nobody thought it was even remotely possible to do what we've done in a period of less than 9 months, something that just not even thinkable. And we took a lot of heat when we said this is our goal, and we frankly weren't even quite using the numbers that we used. We far exceeded what we thought. If we would have said next year, I think most people would have said that would be great, that would be a miracle. But we did it long before sometime next year. So now I want to ask several leaders who have been crucial in this effort to join me on stage as I sign the executive order to ensure that American citizens have first priority to receive American vaccines, and then we're going to be working with other countries all over the world, and I think we'll be able to start doing that almost immediately also, because we have millions of doses coming in. So thank you very much. Thank you. It's a great honor. I received almost 75 million votes, the highest number of votes in the history of our country, for 12 million more than the 63 million we received 4 years ago. President Obama received 3 million less in his second term, and he won easily. I received 12 million more, which, by the way, is a record, 12 million more. And they say that when the numbers came out, and the numbers came through machines, and all of those ballots were taken away and added. All you have to do is turn on your local television set, and you'll see what happened, with thousands of ballots coming out from under tables, with all of the terrible things you saw. All you have to do is take a look, and if somebody has the courage, I know who the next administration will be. And I'll tell you what, life will be much easier for this country because of what we've done right now. And because of a lot of the people in this room, the job you've done on the vaccine, together with a lot of others, has been a modern-day miracle. And it's really been acknowledged as such. And I want to thank you. I want to give you my love, and I want to give you my thanks, because you're very special people. And now, good luck. You distribute that, General, and really set records, okay? Set records just like we've been doing for 4 years.
I'm Ken Bastida. Tonight, Facebook responded to a pair of new antitrust lawsuits against the company, calling it, quote, revisionist history. Earlier today, the federal government and 48 attorneys general accused Facebook of snatching up its rivals to snuff out the competition. If these lawsuits are successful, the social media giant may be forced to divest Instagram and WhatsApp. Facebook acquired Instagram in 2012 for $1 billion and WhatsApp for $19 billion 2 years later. At the time, the Federal Trade Commission approved both deals. But now in a new lawsuit, the feds and a coalition of 48 states, including California, are accusing Facebook of abusing its market power to crush smaller competitors. The suit also alleges that purchases of WhatsApp and Instagram help the company maintain monopoly power. We asked an expert whether he believes the feds can force Facebook to make any changes.
20 years ago, Microsoft was sued and declared a monopoly by a judge. And guess what happened? Pretty much nothing. The question is whether or not that's going to happen this time around. It's really hard to tell whether or not Facebook is going to be forced to change and what the government ultimately wants out of this other than dragging Facebook through the mud.
We reached out to Facebook for comment on the lawsuit, have not heard back yet, but in a blog post, Facebook says the FTC's approval of the deals years ago and its lawsuit today demonstrate that no sale will ever be final. Facebook says that will ultimately result in harm.
A bold crackdown on top of an impending lockdown. Just hours before a new regional stay-at-home order is set to take place, leaders in Nevada City unanimously approved fines for people not following mask guidelines.
Police officers will be allowed to enforce the policy. CBS 13's Steve Large is live for us in Nevada City tonight with the controversial COVID law. Steve.
Well, you know, we've heard sheriff's departments up and down the state say over and over again they will not enforce the state's COVID-19 guidelines. The police here now will, and the protests have already started. Banging drums and barking chants of "We will not consent." A small and loud group of protesters gathered outside a closed Nevada City Hall as council met via Zoom to vote on enforcing the state face covering mandate with civil citations enforced by police. Fines would start at $100 for a first violation.
And there's a bunch of people who feel like, you know, they believe that masks are bad for you, that the COVID isn't real.
Nevada City Mayor Erin Minette says she's hopeful the new enforcement tool will help stop the COVID spread.
And for Nevada County, for the longest time, we had literally one death and hardly any cases. But all of a sudden, those are skyrocketing.
There have now been 1,800 total cases and 19 deaths across the county. Nevada City's police chief, Chad Ellis, voiced concern over the enforcement ordinance and warned he would send it to the Police Officers Association attorney to determine the constitutionality of it.
So I can tell you that law enforcement, throughout the state, they're concerned about it.
Signs posted up and down Nevada City's Broad Street show businesses asking people to wear masks if they go indoors. How the enforcement option will now play out remains to be seen.
I hate to see that have to go to that direction.
I love this place. I hope that we figure it all out together.
A city facing a COVID-19 crisis and a council declaring face covering education is not enough, giving its police the power of face covering enforcement. This urgency ordinance goes into effect right away. And a reminder, the state guidelines say that anytime you leave your home, everyone is required to wear a face covering, although there are a long list.
First of all, let me thank you for joining us today. I also want to acknowledge Dr. Kathleen Toomey, who's with us as always, Dr. Vic Capil, who is the Chief Medical Officer for the Department of Public Health. Vic, thank you for being with us today and appreciate both of y'all's work on the vaccine distribution and also continuing to fight COVID-19. General John King, our insurance commissioner, who is leading the vaccine distribution task force, is not able to be here today, but I certainly want to thank him for all his efforts in recent months as we've taken the fight to COVID-19 and made plans to deploy a safe and effective vaccine. Today I'm going to be brief so that Dr. Toomey can walk through some of our planning that our teams have been working on the last few months related to vaccine distribution. Our top priority has been to deliver whichever vaccines were approved to the people of our state in a safe, efficient, and coordinated fashion. Last week I held calls with our leaders of the nursing home industry and our hospitals to walk through their coordinated efforts to combat COVID-19 and ensure that these critical institutions had the supplies, manpower, and resources necessary to continue this fight throughout the winter months. I was also able to speak with representatives from CVS who are working hand in hand with Operation Warp Speed to serve as a linchpin of the federal disbursement strategy nationwide. I want to take a moment and just say how grateful we are to Operation Warp Speed and the Trump administration for this unprecedented and incredible achievement. The public-private sector partnership working together has developed a miracle of modern science that will save countless lives in the days ahead. Dr. Toomey is going to provide an overview of our strategic plan here in just a few moments, but I wanted to stress a few takeaways real quick from today's briefing. Number one, yes, we will have a limited number of vaccines that will be distributed within Georgia in the next week to 10 days. However, and this is critically important, our first shipments will not be anywhere close enough for anyone in our state to stop following the same public health guidance that we've had in place for many months. The limited amount of vaccine doses we will receive in the coming days will be going to the most vulnerable and those on the front lines of fighting COVID-19. That means residents of nursing homes and our healthcare workers. The general public will not be able to be vaccinated.
Sacramento restaurants will be forced to close all on-site dining, even outdoor. The city announced hundreds of free heaters. Sacramento says it used CARES Act money to buy 400 propane heaters to help businesses run their operations outside. They'll be given out starting tomorrow, but again, restaurants won't be able to use them for at least
milestone when it comes to homeless people in this city. A new report from Homeless Advocates says COVID has helped to propel the shelter population to record numbers. CBS 2's Andrea Grimes has this.
Homeless advocates call these numbers astronomical. They say for the first time, the number of single adults sleeping in City Department of Homeless Services shelters reached more than 20,000. That includes an all-time record of 15,369 single men and a near record of 4,841 single women in October, the latest statistics available. All of this according to the Campaign for New York Housing coalition of advocacy groups.
This dire homelessness crisis among single adults has been exacerbated by COVID-19, which has already forced more individuals into homelessness and will likely worsen in the coming months.
Advocates point out these high numbers do not include those sleeping on the streets or in private shelters. They say not only is COVID to blame, but multiple economic and policy failings, including a lack of supportive housing, which is affordable housing with support services. Mayor de Blasio says even during the pandemic, massive outreach has continued to get the homeless off the streets and into shelters and help.
They need mental health services, they need substance misuse services. Obviously, everyone ultimately needs affordable housing or supportive housing.
The campaign is calling on Governor Cuomo to fulfill a commitment he made in 2016 to build 20,000 supportive housing units across the state. To date, 6,000 have been funded.
Homelessness is expensive. Without stable housing, very vulnerable people cycle in and out of shelters, prisons, jails, and state psychiatric centers. Study after study shows that supportive housing actually saves the state money.
A spokesman with the State Division of the Budget says the Cuomo administration continues to fund a $20 billion homelessness and housing plan. He says they've already exceeded their goal of 6,000 homes and are on their way to achieving their goal of 20,000 supportive homes over 15 years. On the Upper West Side,
what's
Andrea
interesting
Grimes,
going on in the
CBS
atmosphere
2
tonight
News.
and tomorrow is we had a solar flare on Monday, which has actually prompted the Space Prediction Center to issue what is called a geomagnetic storm watch. Now, what this means is it's nothing that's detrimental. It just means that we could see the aurora borealis or the northern lights pretty far to the south. Now, typically a G3 or G4 storm is what it takes for us to get any chance at all into Carolinas, and we could see that happen mainly tomorrow night. There is a small chance tonight, but the peak of this would likely be tomorrow. Most of the northern states would see the aurora, but low on the northern horizon, away from the city lights, there is the potential that parts of the Carolinas could see this. Now, this has happened before, happened back in 2010, 2003, 2004, when we had some big solar flares that we saw that, and then we'll have to see how it unfolds the next couple of nights. But the key to this is you don't always really know if the aurora is going to be visible until about 60 to maybe 120 minutes ahead of time. So there's the possibility right now.
Colorado's Attorney General is now one of 48 all over the country filing a lawsuit against social media giant Facebook. The suit claims the company has unfairly squashed competitors.
This comes as the Federal Trade Commission has filed an antitrust lawsuit against Facebook. Now the tech giant faces two suits that could break it up by force. Jeff Todd spoke to the Attorney General today, and Jeff, he tells you it's about Facebook, but also about the impact on Colorado companies.
Karen, Facebook will argue that it just makes platforms that people want, but the Attorney General says that it has stifled competition and hurt consumers. There's a call to break up Facebook, Instagram, and WhatsApp.
When Facebook was on their toes, they provided a more privacy-friendly product. If Facebook has this dominant position, a moat, if you will, that no one can challenge them, they don't have to provide consumers with better services.
Colorado Attorney General Phil Weiser was part of the leadership of a massive group, including 47 other attorneys generals and the Federal Trade Commission, in suing to break up Facebook.
Our conclusion is that Facebook had this whole campaign to either buy or bury competitors and to thereby deprive consumers of the benefits of choice, of better products and better services.
In an age of ultra-partisanship, arguably spurred by social media, breaking up large tech firms has become a bipartisan issue. Colorado Congressman Ken Buck said this afternoon, big tech's reckoning has just begun.
We need to show the American people that we can have leadership from both parties working together to solve problems. That's what we're doing in this lawsuit.
Facebook says it has constant competition and will fight the lawsuit and it argues its platforms are popular because of investment and innovation. Weiser says a smaller Facebook could help Colorado's tech scene grow.
This case matters to the people of Colorado, to innovative upstarts in Colorado. It's all about making sure they've got choice in the marketplace and that new firms have a fair shot to compete.
It's estimated there are about 250,000 tech jobs in Colorado, and the Attorney General says protecting those is one of the most important reasons he joined this lawsuit. But Facebook will argue that's the competition they face every day, proving that they are not a monopoly. We're live in Denver tonight. Jeff Todd covering Colorado for.
Yeah, it happened again. Another mysterious boom, this time in Oswego County. We did reach out to the American Meteor Society, a spokesperson calling last night's event an event, but he doesn't think it was a fireball like last week. That's because there was hardly any delay between the sound and the flash that you just saw on your screen. They got more than 20 reports about it last night.
Tonight in a series of massive state unemployment hacks that we first exposed. Now, attention is shifting from the state to Bank of America, which distributes most of that money. At last count, $105 billion through debit cards we discovered are vulnerable to hackers. KPIX5's Kenny Choi has received more than 100 emails from victims and reports that now lawmakers are taking notice.
From a criminal's perspective, it's the perfect scenario. ATMs give out dollar bills, and cash is king in the underworld. This is how fraudsters are now stealing pandemic jobless funds. It's a sophisticated scam that we uncovered after hearing from more than 100 victims, and now lawmakers are paying attention.
It's just absolutely unacceptable that we have a bank that's not responding. They're not responding to you, not responding to me, not responding to the people who they are serving.
That was Assemblymember Phil Ting's first reaction after watching our reports about rampant hack attacks on debit cards issued by Bank of America, EDD's exclusive card provider.
$1,000.
So 2 transactions of $1,000 each.
Yeah, my mother actually lost $4,806.
We heard from dozens of desperate Californians who lost thousands of dollars, mostly stolen in cash from ATMs miles away from where they live. As we have previously reported, the debit cards do not have chips, making them more vulnerable to fraud. But despite all the obvious red flags,
how did I make 2 transactions in San Diego and Arizona within minutes of each other?
Victims tell us Bank of America is routinely denying their claims and leaving them holding the bag.
Like lies aside.
I was really mad. How can you tell me that I'm not going to get my money back? The money that I earned, that's rightfully mine.
The single mom found out her card was hacked while on a road trip to Pismo Beach with her kids. 2 suspicious withdrawals, one for $200 and another for $800, made that very morning back in the Bay Area.
And I'm thinking, whoa, I'm not in Milpitas, I'm all the way down south. Like, how does that happen? And of course I panicked because I've never had anything happen like this to me before.
Like everyone else, she spent days trying to get through to Bank of America's fraud department to appeal the denial of her claim.
As soon as you tell them that it's a fraud claim and as soon as you give them your claim number, they hang up on you.
She's still out $1,000, money she desperately needs.
I need to feed my kids. That's the most important thing. I need to be able to provide some kind of reassurance to my kids that, hey, you know, I got you guys. Things will be okay.
We really need to know what is the problem and how do we solve it. We're going into the holiday season. This is where people need money to maybe buy a few gifts for their kids.
COVID-19 vaccines are around the corner. And so is the question, can your employer require you to get it?
The answer is actually a little bit complicated. Ordinarily, the answer would be yes. So ordinarily, if there's an approved vaccine, an employer could require an employee to get it. But there have to be certain exceptions.
Like if it's against your religion, or if you have a disability that could be affected by the vaccine. But Professor of Law Lance Gable with Wayne State University says an unprecedented factor is these vaccines had emergency approval.
It's unclear whether an emergency approval is going to be treated the same way in terms of mandatory requirements. So in the past, the CDC has said that emergency-approved medications and vaccines shouldn't be allowed to be made mandatory. because there's a concern that there still might be some need to test them further.
Another point to consider is if the vaccine is found to be a major factor in workplace health and safety.
The federal law requires employers to provide safe and healthy work environments for every employee. Absolutely required under OSHA. That means that in certain types of environments, they're going to have to require employees to take the vaccine.
Attorney Anastasi Marcoux with Levine & Levine says he expects the vaccine will be mandatory in the medical field and jobs with a lot of personal interaction, like the restaurant industry.
It sounds like it's just legal battles waiting to happen.
It's going to have to be, yeah. This is really going to push the limits of the law on what OSHA requires for employers to do. And it's going to push the law on what kind of exceptions employees are allowed to use.
We'll have to wait and see what happens as the vaccines roll out and the court cases roll in. Scott Walsh.
Stories to keep you and your family safe and sound today. You're going to need 2 doses of the COVID-19 vaccine to be protected. We've talked about that. But that does mean 2 trips to the doctor. But if you can't keep up with the appointments and barely remember what day it is, because let me tell you, I feel you. You're in luck. The government just releasing the first pictures of vaccination cards. So they're going to be given to anyone who gets the vaccine. The cards then can help you keep track of when you need to get that second shot. You know, it's like a reminder. These are like old school, right? We used to get these for hair appointments, doctor's appointments. It could also be useful in the future for getting into places or events where a vaccine is required. Interesting stuff. Starting today, Walmart making it even easier to do everything from the comfort of your couch. The company dropping the $35 minimum needed for free delivery for Walmart Plus subscribers. It goes into effect today. Walmart Plus trying to compete with other big subscription services like Amazon Prime, Amazon Fresh now. Well, 'tis the season for shopping and gifting. It turns out all we really want this year is a gift card to our favorite store. It's according to some new research from one poll. Other things on the list: clothes, accessories, food, books, exercise equipment. If you're buying someone workout gear, make sure they actually ask for it, though. That's just a little tip. You don't want to give someone like, hey, here's some leg weights. And they're like, is this a hint? You know what I'm saying, Larry?
Oh, you need some leg weights.
Only if I ask for it. I was going to say treadmill, but that's like a big gift to just spring on someone.
Well, that's a big one. Big, expensive one right there.
Yeah, and if you didn't ask for one, it can be offensive. What are you trying to say?
Well, maybe if someone gives you, like exercise equipment, you could always sell it.
That's true. I'm selling this exercise equipment.
Regift it, maybe. I don't know.
Very true.
One Elk Grove family says the Grinch who stole their Christmas drove a blue Amazon van.
And as CBS 13's Rachel Wolf shows us, it was all caught on camera.
I was absolutely shocked. It's not something that you would think your trusted Amazon drivers would be doing.
Sarah Ross is receiving lots of holiday gifts, including a gaming chair for her son from his girlfriend via UPS. But once Ross realized it wasn't there on her porch, she checked surveillance cameras and saw an Amazon driver not only dropping off more gifts, but disappearing with hers.
He notices the package on the porch. He kind of takes a look at it and decides to pick it up. He carries it down to his blue Amazon van, opens up the back, and puts the chair right into his Amazon truck and drives off.
Ross says she notified Amazon about the theft immediately.
Because the driver did drop off the packages, they were able to trace it back to what driver it was, so they know exactly who it is.
Then she contacted Elk Grove police, who are now investigating. No Christmas surprise for her son, but there likely will be one for this Amazon driver.
This is a tough lesson, but I'm not sure that person can be trusted.
As for the gift,
they haven't said whether they're going to, get the package back or if they're going to just purchase a new one or compensate us, for the cost of it. We don't know that part yet.
A vaccine if it weren't for me for another 4 years, because FDA would have never been able to do what they did, what I forced them to do. And Pfizer and others even decided to not assess the results of their vaccine. In other words, not come out with a vaccine until just after the election. That's because of what I did with favored nations and these other elements. Big Pharma ran millions of dollars of negative advertisements against me during the campaign, which I won, by the way, but, we'll find that out. Almost 74 million votes. We had Big Pharma against us. We had the media against us. We had Big Tech against us. We had a lot of dishonesty against us. These corrupt games will not deter us from doing what is right for the American people, and I will always put American patients first. And I think it can never be shown better than what I'm doing today. Already we successfully lowered drug prices for the first time in 51 years.
What an extremely exciting day for American healthcare. On top of the news that you just made, today, Pfizer will be filing an application for an emergency use authorization with the FDA for their COVID-19 vaccine that appears to be 95% effective. Within weeks, we could have a decision from FDA, and within 24 hours of that, we will have started distributing millions of doses of safe and effective.
Sodom has become corrupt, a city of sin.
But my nephew Lot lives there. He has a family.
The outcry against Sodom is great. Its sins are very great.
Going to destroy it.
Righteous people in Sodom, I will spare the whole city.
Please, help us. Fewer. 30. 20. They would not destroy them, surely. Help us.
Even if I find only 10, I will save the whole city.
is Trans Day of Remembrance, and a group marched to City Hall this evening to raise awareness about those lost to violence and drugs in the trans community. In the last month, 3 trans women have died in Baltimore. Baltimore City Councilman Zeke Cohen announced they are donating $5,000 to Baltimore Safe Haven, and the money comes from the Kennedy Award for Public Service. Baltimore Safe Haven provides housing and services to help trans people who are living in survival mode.
We need education and resources. We're not just sex workers. We are people who live here. We pay taxes here. Our lives matter. We need support. We need health care. We need homeless services to provide us with a space for people that's over 24.
And to learn more about Baltimore Safe Haven and Trans Remembrance Day, you can just head to our
opening
website.
Today for a housing complex devoted to the LGBTQ community. The ribbon-cutting ceremony for the 𝐔𝐍𝐏𝐑𝐄𝐂𝐄𝐃 South in Woodhaven, Queens, will be the first housing complex in New York City owned by the Black trans community. 𝐔𝐍𝐏𝐑𝐄𝐂𝐃 stands for gays and lesbians living in a transgender society. It's aimed to help those who face housing discrimination due to their gender identity.
30 years of a dream of doing something like this, but not just doing it, putting us in an area, in a location where we don't have to run.
The Queensborough president-elect was at today's event and says that he hopes to fund more projects to house the
State
transgender
Secretary of Health, Dr. Rachel Levine, says the state is not putting any additional coronavirus-related restrictions in place, at least not yet. However, Dr. Levine warns that the coronavirus is spreading quickly, and it is up to businesses, schools, and individuals to do their part. Good afternoon. I'm Stacey Smith.
And I'm Kim Gable. In other parts of the state, though, they are not so lucky. In Philadelphia, there are more than 2,500 new coronavirus cases today. City leaders just announced they're putting tougher restrictions into place, including banning indoor gatherings of any size, indoor dining, and closing places like gyms and museums. And employees must work from home if possible. Our Andy Sheehan is live right now with the very latest on this. Andy.
Kim, with these numbers skyrocketing, the state health secretary says it's our collective responsibility to stop this community spread and bring the virus back under control.
We can answer the call to prevent the spread of this virus, COVID-19.
People are hoarding again in states like Michigan and cities like Chicago, which have gone back into lockdown mode.